What if everything you've been taught about dealing with disrespect is exactly why people keep crossing your boundaries? Most people believe that honesty, kindness, and patience are enough to earn respect. But if that were true, the most sincere people would never be betrayed, ignored, or manipulated. Yet reality tells a very different story. Again and again, good people find themselves losing to those who understand the hidden rules of human psychology. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When someone disrespects you, they're often not testing your strength. They're testing your predictability. They want to know whether you'll become emotional, defensive, guilty, or desperate to prove yourself. And the moment they discover your pattern, they gain an advantage you didn't even realize you were giving away. That's why so many intelligent people end up trapped in the same exhausting cycle, wondering why the same kinds of people keep taking advantage of them. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He understood that power doesn't belong to the loudest person or the most aggressive one. It belongs to the person who sees the game before everyone else realizes they're playing it. The surprising part is that this has very little to do with becoming ruthless. Instead, it has everything to do with seeing incentives instead of excuses, perception instead of appearances, and strategy instead of emotional impulse. In this video, you'll discover why some people always seem impossible to manipulate, even when surrounded by dishonest individuals. You'll learn how to recognize hidden motives, protect your emotional leverage, control the frame of every interaction, and become the kind of person dirty players quietly avoid. By the end, you'll never look at conflict, influence, or human behavior the same way again. So if you're ready to stop reacting and start thinking like a master strategist, stay with us, because the first lesson changes everything. Most people grow up believing that being honest, kind, and fair is enough to earn respect. It sounds right, doesn't it? But sooner or later, reality delivers a lesson that feels almost unfair. Someone lies, manipulates, or twists the truth, and somehow they walk away with the advantage while the honest person is left confused. That's where psychology begins to reveal something uncomfortable. The world doesn't always reward good intentions. It rewards awareness. And that's exactly where Machiavelli forces people to look beyond comforting illusions. The average person spends too much time asking whether someone is a good person or a bad person. A master strategist asks a completely different question. What game is this person playing? That tiny shift changes everything. Manipulation rarely looks like aggression at first. It often arrives wearing a smile, a favor, or a compliment that feels just a little too perfect. Real power isn't built by assuming everyone has pure motives. It's built by recognizing patterns before they become problems, even when those patterns are hidden beneath politeness. Think about the workplace. For example, two employees work equally hard, yet one constantly receives the recognition. It isn't always because they're more talented. Sometimes they've simply learned how perception works. They know when to speak, when to stay silent, who to help publicly, and when to let others take responsibility for failure. That's strategy in action. It isn't magic, and it isn't luck. It's understanding that people respond to appearances long before they evaluate reality, whether they admit it or not. Here's the part that surprises most people. The goal isn't becoming manipulative. It's becoming impossible to manipulate. There's a huge difference. Someone who understands manipulation doesn't automatically become dishonest, just like someone who studies fire doesn't suddenly become an arsonist. They simply stop walking into the flames with their eyes closed. Awareness becomes protection, and protection creates freedom. Funny enough, the people who never learn these lessons often believe they're being nice, when in reality, they're simply becoming predictable. Machiavelli understood something that modern psychology continues to confirm centuries later. Human behavior follows incentives far more consistently than intentions. People don't always do what they say they'll do. They do what benefits them in the moment. That truth may sound cynical at first, but it's actually liberating. Once someone accepts this, disappointment starts fading because expectations become grounded in observation instead of wishful thinking. They stop chasing perfect people and start understanding imperfect human nature. From this point forward, every interaction starts looking different. Conversations reveal hidden signals. Compliments carry different weight. Silence begins to speak louder than words. And little by little, the person realizes that surviving difficult people isn't about becoming colder, it's about becoming wiser. Because once someone learns to see the invisible forces behind behavior, an even more important question naturally appears. If intentions aren't the best guide, then what should they start paying attention to instead? One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to read minds instead of reading incentives. They spend hours wondering whether someone likes them, respects them, or secretly dislikes them, when the better question is much simpler. What does this person gain from this situation? Psychology repeatedly shows that behavior becomes much easier to predict when someone focuses on incentives rather than promises. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Words can be rehearsed, emotions can be performed, but incentives quietly pull the strings behind almost every important decision. That's why experienced strategists rarely become shocked by betrayal. They don't expect everyone to remain loyal forever, because they understand that loyalty often changes when circumstances change. Instead of blindly trusting what people say, they watch what people consistently do. A friend who only appears when they need something, a coworker who praises in public but competes in private, or someone who suddenly becomes warm after your success is revealing far more through actions than through speech. That's not paranoia. That's strategy supported by careful observation instead of emotional assumptions. Another lesson most people learn far too late is that access is one of the greatest forms of power. Every conversation, every personal story, every emotional reaction gives someone information, and information, in the wrong hands, becomes leverage. That doesn't mean becoming distant from everyone. It simply means understanding that trust should be earned gradually. Imagine meeting someone for the first time. Instead of immediately sharing your frustrations, ambitions, and insecurities, allow the conversation to breathe. Let them reveal themselves first, while you calmly observe how they treat others when there's nothing to gain. Interestingly, the strongest people often appear mysterious without trying. They don't constantly explain themselves. They don't rush to defend every decision. They don't feel obligated to answer every question simply because it was asked. There's a quiet confidence in leaving some pages unread. Manipulation becomes much harder when others can't easily predict your emotional triggers, your next move, or your deepest desires. A book with every chapter already open rarely keeps anyone curious, but one that still holds unanswered questions naturally commands attention. Think about the people who leave the strongest impression. Chances are they weren't the loudest in the room or the ones talking non-stop about themselves. More often, they listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and revealed only what was necessary. That balance creates respect because people instinctively value what isn't handed to them all at once. Psychology explains this through curiosity and perceived value, while Machiavelli would simply call it intelligent restraint. Either way, the principle remains the same. Scarcity increases importance far more effectively than constant availability ever could. Little by little, a different way of moving through the world begins to emerge. Instead of chasing validation, the person becomes selective about where attention goes, who receives emotional energy, and what information deserves to remain private. They stop reacting to every invitation, every opinion, and every attempt to pull them into unnecessary drama. Yet, protecting access is only half the equation. The real challenge comes when someone deliberately tries to provoke an emotional response, and that's where the next lesson quietly begins to reveal its true value. Before we move on, I need to tell you something. If what you've heard so far has made you realize how often people read your intentions while you fail to recognize theirs, then this is for you. I created an ebook called The Silent Influence Code because these lessons go far beyond what I can cover in a single video. Inside, you'll discover the psychological signals that shape how people perceive, trust, and respond to you. Combining timeless Machiavellian principles with modern psychology into practical strategies you can apply in everyday life, you'll learn how to project quiet confidence, become harder to manipulate, recognize hidden social dynamics, and naturally earn more respect without becoming louder, aggressive, or fake. It's a practical guide designed to help you see people more clearly and make them see you differently. If you're serious about mastering these skills, click the link in the pinned comment and get your copy of the Silent Influence Code today. It may completely change the way you approach every conversation, every relationship, and every opportunity. Now, let's get back to the lesson. Most people believe strength is about reacting faster, speaking louder, or proving they're right. But that's exactly where they lose control without realizing it. The moment someone can predict your emotional reaction, they can begin steering your decisions. Psychology has demonstrated time and again that emotions are contagious, and skilled manipulators know how to create frustration, urgency, or anger simply to make others abandon clear thinking. Machiavelli understood that real power begins where emotional impulsiveness ends. The calmest person in the room often controls the direction of the conversation without saying much at all. One of the oldest forms of manipulation is provocation. Someone criticizes you unfairly, interrupts you, mocks your ideas, or questions your character, not necessarily because they believe it, but because they're testing where your emotional buttons are. The average person rushes to defend themselves. A strategist pauses. That brief silence isn't weakness, it's information gathering. While everyone else is focused on the words being exchanged, the strategist is observing the motive behind them. Very often, the attack isn't about the topic itself. It's about pulling someone into a game they never needed to play. Imagine a meeting where one colleague makes a sarcastic remark designed to embarrass another in front of everyone. Most people instinctively fire back, hoping to reclaim respect. Ironically, that reaction usually gives the provocateur exactly what they wanted: emotional chaos. A wiser response might be a composed smile, a short answer, or even no answer at all. That unexpected neutrality shifts the dynamic completely. Suddenly, the person trying to create tension is left carrying the awkwardness alone. Strategy isn't always about defeating someone directly. Sometimes it's about refusing to provide the fuel their plan depends on. Neutrality is often misunderstood because people confuse it with passivity. They're not the same thing. Passive people surrender control. Strategically neutral people preserve it. They choose when to engage instead of reacting automatically. Think of a skilled chess player who doesn't rush after every move their opponent makes. They study the entire board before touching a single piece. Psychology teaches that delayed responses often produce better decisions, because they allow emotions to settle while logic catches up. In a world addicted to instant reactions, patience becomes an unfair advantage. There's another benefit that most people overlook. Emotional discipline doesn't just protect your decisions, it protects your reputation. People begin noticing who remains composed under pressure and who falls apart the moment conflict appears. Over time, that consistency builds quiet authority. Others stop expecting dramatic reactions because they know they won't get them. Ironically, becoming less emotionally available to manipulation often makes others treat you with greater respect. Power grows naturally when people realize they can't easily disturb your inner balance. Eventually, something remarkable begins to happen. Situations that once felt personal start looking almost mechanical, as though hidden patterns are revealing themselves behind every conflict. Instead of asking, "How should I respond?" a different question starts emerging. Is responding at all the smartest move? And once someone begins seeing the game from that perspective, they discover that the greatest victories often come from changing the board itself, rather than simply playing the next move. Most people think in straight lines. Someone attacks, so they defend. Someone criticizes, so they explain. Someone blocks a path, so they push harder. It feels logical, but it's exactly what makes them predictable. Psychology shows that the human mind naturally searches for direct solutions because they're easier to process. A strategist, however, understands that the shortest path isn't always the smartest one. Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized that true power belongs to those who shape the conditions of the game, rather than simply reacting to the moves already on the board. Non-linear strategy begins with a simple realization. Every conflict offers more than one battlefield. If someone is trying to damage your reputation, proving them wrong may not be the most effective response. Sometimes the smarter move is to strengthen your reputation elsewhere until their criticism loses its weight. If a competitor constantly seeks your attention, denying them access may weaken them more than defeating them in public ever could. That's the difference between solving the visible problem and quietly removing the foundation that allows the problem to exist in the first place. Think about water flowing around a massive rock in a river. It doesn't waste energy trying to break through the obstacle head-on. It simply changes direction, keeps moving, and eventually reaches its destination anyway. Human conflicts often work the same way. The person obsessed with winning every argument usually loses time, energy, and emotional stability. The strategist asks a different question. What outcome actually matters? That shift changes everything. Instead of chasing victories that satisfy the ego, they pursue results that increase long-term influence and preserve valuable resources. Timing is another part of this equation that most people underestimate. The right decision made at the wrong moment can become the wrong decision. Manipulation often depends on forcing immediate reactions because urgency narrows perception. That's why experienced negotiators, successful leaders, and skilled diplomats rarely allow themselves to be rushed. They create space between stimulus and response. Sometimes waiting a single day reveals information that wasn't available yesterday. Other times, remaining silent forces impatient people to expose far more than they originally intended. Psychology consistently rewards those who know how to slow the pace when everyone else feels pressured to speed it up. Context matters just as much as timing. The exact same words can create conflict in one environment and inspire respect in another. The same decision can appear reckless today and visionary 6 months later. Strategic thinkers never isolate a situation from the environment surrounding it. Before making an important move, they quietly examine the people involved, the incentives at play, the emotional climate, and the likely consequences several steps ahead. That's where real power emerges, not from having the quickest answer, but from understanding the invisible structure shaping every interaction. Eventually, a person begins noticing that the strongest moves are often the ones nobody expected because they were solving a completely different problem than everyone else could see. The conversation stops revolving around winning individual battles and starts focusing on controlling momentum itself. And once someone learns to reshape the environment, instead of merely surviving inside it, another fascinating possibility appears. What happens when influence grows not through constant action, but through carefully chosen moments of absence? Most people believe influence comes from being constantly present. They answer every message immediately, accept every invitation, explain every decision, and make themselves available at all times. It feels generous, even responsible. But psychology reveals an unexpected truth. What is constantly available often becomes invisible. Familiarity can quietly reduce appreciation. Machiavelli recognized that power isn't measured by how often people see you, but by how strongly they feel your presence when you choose to appear. Sometimes, the most influential move is knowing when not to be there. Scarcity changes perception in almost every area of life. People value rare opportunities more than unlimited ones, and the same principle applies to attention. When someone has unrestricted access to your time, your opinions, and your emotional energy, they gradually begin treating those things as ordinary. Strategic absence interrupts that pattern. Instead of always being within reach, the strategist becomes intentionally selective. They aren't playing games or pretending to be important. They're protecting the value of their attention by giving it where it truly matters. Think about the people who command genuine respect. They don't chase every conversation or feel the need to insert themselves into every discussion. They contribute with purpose, then step back. During that absence, something interesting happens. Others continue thinking about their words. Curiosity grows. Expectations build. Psychology explains that the mind naturally assigns greater value to what it cannot constantly access. It's the reason a well-placed pause in a conversation often carries more weight than a long explanation. Silence leaves room for imagination, and imagination is surprisingly powerful. This principle also works in difficult relationships. Imagine someone who constantly seeks your attention through criticism, unnecessary conflict, or emotional drama. The instinctive reaction is to defend yourself or keep engaging until they understand your point. Yet many of these people aren't looking for understanding at all. They're looking for access. By stepping back, instead of feeding the cycle, you quietly remove the reward that sustains their behavior. Manipulation often weakens when it no longer receives the emotional response it was designed to provoke. Sometimes distance communicates a boundary more effectively than 100 carefully chosen words. Of course, strategic absence doesn't mean disappearing from the lives of people who genuinely matter. It means becoming intentional instead of automatic. Be fully present where loyalty, respect, and mutual growth exist. Elsewhere, learn to protect your attention as if it were one of your most valuable resources, because it is. Strategy isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about refusing to let the world decide where your energy goes. The people who master this distinction rarely feel overwhelmed because they've stopped giving everyone unrestricted access to their inner world. Over time, this quiet selectiveness transforms more than relationships. It changes perception itself. Others begin recognizing someone who cannot be pressured into constant availability. Someone whose presence carries weight because it isn't freely scattered in every direction. Yet there is one final layer that ties everything together. Influence reaches its highest level when a person no longer fights over individual moments, but quietly shapes the way every situation is interpreted before anyone else even realizes the game has begun. The highest level of strategy isn't winning arguments. It's deciding what the argument is about before anyone else does. Most people spend their lives reacting to frames created by others. They defend accusations they didn't need to answer, justify decisions that required no explanation, and chase approval from people who never intended to give it. Psychology teaches that the first interpretation people accept often becomes the foundation for every judgment that follows. Machiavelli understood that whoever controls perception usually controls the outcome long before the final result becomes visible. This is why powerful people rarely rush to explain themselves. They know that endless explanations often communicate uncertainty instead of confidence. When someone feels compelled to justify every choice, every absence, or every success, they quietly hand control of the conversation to whoever demanded the explanation. A strategist does something different. They allow their actions to build a consistent pattern until that pattern speaks louder than temporary opinions. Real power comes from living in a way that makes constant self-defense unnecessary. Reputation, once carefully built, becomes a silent advocate working even when you're not in the room. Consider two leaders facing the same criticism. The first immediately responds to every rumor, trying to correct every misunderstanding. The second remains calm, continues delivering results, and speaks only when doing so serves a clear purpose. At first, the second approach may seem risky. Yet, over time, people begin noticing something important. One leader appears controlled by public opinion, while the other appears guided by conviction. Psychology favors consistency because the human mind instinctively trusts stable behavior more than emotional reactions. In the long run, disciplined actions almost always outlast dramatic explanations. This doesn't mean ignoring every challenge or pretending criticism never matters. There are moments when speaking clearly is essential. The difference lies in intention. Does the response come from fear of being misunderstood, or from a deliberate decision to clarify what truly matters? That distinction changes everything. Manipulation loses much of its force when it can no longer dictate the terms of the conversation. Instead of stepping into every trap, the strategist calmly decides which conversations deserve attention and which deserve silence. That's not avoidance. It's intelligent allocation of energy. Eventually, a remarkable transformation takes place. The person who once reacted emotionally to every opinion begins moving with quiet certainty. Approval becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism becomes information instead of a personal attack. Uncertainty becomes an opportunity to observe rather than a reason to panic. The principles of psychology, the timeless insights of Machiavelli, disciplined strategy, and a deep understanding of manipulation all begin working together. Instead of constantly trying to control other people, the strategist masters the one domain that matters most, their own mind. From that foundation, genuine power stops being something borrowed from external validation and becomes something that cannot easily be taken away. And that's the paradox most people never discover. Becoming mentally untouchable doesn't require becoming ruthless, cold, or emotionally disconnected. It requires seeing the game clearly enough that fewer battles deserve your attention in the first place. When perception is guided by wisdom instead of impulse, when patience replaces urgency, and when deliberate action replaces automatic reaction. Manipulation finds very little to hold on to. The world may remain unpredictable, but the person who has mastered themselves walks through it with a level of calm that no dirty player can easily shake. If there's one lesson to take away from everything you've heard today, it's this. The goal was never to become someone who manipulates others. The goal is to become someone who can no longer be manipulated. That's a completely different path. Every principle you've learned, from understanding psychology and reading incentives to applying strategy, protecting your attention, and recognizing the timeless insights of Machiavelli, is only valuable if you put it into practice. Knowledge that stays in the mind changes nothing. Knowledge applied consistently changes everything. Now ask yourself honestly, how many situations in your life would have turned out differently if you had understood these ideas sooner? How many arguments could you have avoided? How many people would have lost their influence over you? And most importantly, what changes will you make the next time someone tries to cross your boundaries or pull you into a game designed for you to lose? Real power doesn't appear overnight. It is built decision by decision, conversation by conversation, moment by moment. The more you practice emotional discipline, strategic thinking, and calm observation, the more difficult it becomes for anyone to control your actions or disturb your peace. Eventually, people stop seeing someone who reacts to pressure and start seeing someone whose presence quietly changes the entire dynamic of the room. If this video challenged the way you think, let us know in the comments. Which lesson had the biggest impact on you? And which strategy are you going to apply first? We'd love to hear your perspective and continue the conversation. And if you want to keep mastering the hidden psychology of influence, power, strategy, and the timeless wisdom of Machiavelli, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next lesson. The next insight might be the one that completely changes the way you see people and the way they see you.